Hi, we're going to continue in the JavaScript recap, and of course, we are going to be discussing or talking about JavaScript async, and in a bit of trying to discuss about JavaScript async, we are going to be talking about callbacks, asynchronous promises, and async await. They are fundamentals um, prerequisites in JavaScript. So, a bit to start, we'll kickstart from callbacks and what callbacks are, and then some examples, and then kind of run some codes and see how it works and what it is. But then callbacks, just like we have a part of a statement, when you have a conversation with someone on a phone and all that, and you say, I will call back later, right? And what that means is that you're not calling the person now, you're not calling the situation now, you're not calling the shot now, but you're going to do that later. So a callback is a function passed as an argument to another function. This technique allows a function to call another function. So a callback function can run after another function has finished. But then, what is a function? Here is a snippet of what a function looks like. Now, I remember the last time I said that when a function is defined, in a bit for it to run, it has to be called. So a function can execute when it is called. You can write a function, which is this, but then for it to work, you have to call the function. So here we wrote a function called call. Now it could be, of course, it could be anything. It could be name, right? It could be name. And for this name function to work, you have to call that function. And functions are a block of codes that are to execute a particular task. Yeah, so for it to work, of course, you have to call the function and have it work. Now, here is a return statement. In programming, return statements, just like the name, it returns a particular statement. So, and one of the things about return statements that is worthy of note is that a return statement returns a statement that you, being the programmer, wants it to actually return. And what it also does is that anything beneath the return statement is not executed. So what that means is that if, for instance, we have, let's say, we are adding two numbers, um, let's say, um, 2 plus 2, right? And of course, this particular function will run once it's called. But then, what output do we actually want to see once it's run, once it's executed? So for that, you will have to want to do return sum, so that once this function is being run and it's being called, of course, and it's been executed, the outcome is going to be the sum. You could have a lot of things there, but then it is what is returned, right? If, for instance, you've also kind of done some manipulations, interpolations um, in your code base, or literally, let me say, in your block of code, which is a function, for instance, and you will want to return. If you notice, this guy is just here because first it's being defined and being given a value, but then it is not being used. So if, for instance, you will want to return the both, of course you can, either in an object format, right, and then have it the both of them returned, or of course the some kind of interpolations to just kind of return. So basically, I'm just trying to tell you what return statement is. It returns a statement in a block of code. So having said that, let's look at some basic things in callbacks and how it works. Now, I would like you to know what we call function sequence. Now, in JavaScript, functions are executed in the sequence they are called and not in the sequence they are defined. Now, this example will end up displaying goodbye. Now, we have this example here. Now, what are we trying to say? That in as much or in whatever ways you try to kind of define your functions, your JavaScript functions, they are executed in the sequence they are called. Now, remember I said again that in JavaScript functions, for it to actually be executed or for it to actually, not that it is not going to be compiled and all that by the JavaScript engine, the V8 and all that, but then for it to give you the desired output, you have to call. And for you to also call, you also have to return a statement if you are expecting a particular output, right? Yes. So now in functions in Java, in function sequence, we now say again that function sequence are executed not because of how they are defined, but then how they are called. So we're going to try out this example, of course, which I already have here. So let's say I'm going to copy this, right? Sorry, oh my, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and then have it run here, right? And let's see. So when we run this, what's going to be the output for us? So like we've been doing now, note I'm using Node.js, right? So that's the reason why I will have to do npm run start. Now if you have not followed through the tutorials that we have, not to worry, do not worry. I'll have that also somewhere in the channel or in the playlist where you can actually pick and then go through what we have discussed or what we have learned and all that. So on how to set up your Node.js, particularly to start up your server. So npm run start in this place is a script that we have, and basically what it's going to do is to help us start the server. So while we're starting the server, we're trying to also have the JavaScript run. Mind you, what we are doing at the moment is that we are working on trying to do some JavaScript recap that will introduce us into the backend server side using Node.js. So having going to run this, now you will notice that I get goodbye and then and I'll get hello. So now the first that was displayed is um my second, right? Yes. And why? Because it was what was called right first. So we're having two functions here. This is the first one, and the function defined my first, and then the other function defined my second. But then when it wants to execute, when it wants to bring out something kind of console log and all that, if you notice that it was not my first that came in first, not at all, but then it was the first that was called, and this is where we called them. So my second was called first, and then followed by my first. So, and when this guy was called, and it was able to run this particular function and also have it printed out, that is console logged in the terminal. So what happens when we tend to switch? So when I switch this, my first now comes in first and all that. So what is being displayed when we tend to run? So I'm going to clear my terminal. We can use clear like this and then run it again. Do not worry again if you have not have this set up to this particular point. um, um, there is, of course, there is a video about how you can have this set up and reach this particular point. But if you have your normal JavaScript, of course, you can run this and then also have this same result, only that the output and where you might want to get it could would be the difference. But then just follow step what this tutorial is all about, and then you can actually follow up and catch up. So when I do npm run start, it tends to run, and then you can check it out here. Oh my, so hello came in first and then goodbye. So what does that mean again? It tends to prove what function sequence is, that JavaScript functions are executed in the sequence they are called, not in the sequence they are defined. And of course, from the examples displayed, you will see that we have something tenable here. So let's go straight to another called sequence control. Now, what does that mean? Now, in JavaScript, sometimes you would like to have better control over when to execute a function. Suppose you want to do, let's say, calculation and then display the result. We will call a, let's say, calculator function. Let's give it the name my calculator, and then you want to save the result and then call another function called, let's say, my displayer to display the result, right? So at this point now, we are not making JavaScript to take precedence or to take autonomy of what to actually um, kind of display or kind of execute per time. Of course, literally the codes are going to be executed, but then we want to take autonomy ourselves. We want to take the charge here on what is going to get executed part time. So now we are now taking control of the sequence at what point and all that. So we're going to have now look at this example. Maybe I'll just talk about this example here and then have it copied and pasted, and then we see what it is. So we are having a function. The first function is called my display, and it's simply to kind of console log what is passed in the parameter. And I remember also in the last class we talked about parameters and arguments, and we say parameters are the things that are going to be manipulated in the block of code of a particular function, while the arguments are the things that are going to kind of augment or to go in line with what is passed in the parameter. So let's say of course in the parameter, let's say parameter 1 2, or a parameter let's say that has name, age, and all that. So and then you try to do some manipulation and all that. So for you to actually have that parameter that is being put to be worked upon, executed, and all that, you have to pass an argument. Okay, what that means is, look, basically, if you look at this section of this code, right? If you look at this section of this code right here, this is a function, right? And it has a parameter, just like we have here, called number one, number two, and then this is where we actually made use of number one and number two. Basically, we are saying sum number one and number two, but then number one and number two are just at this moment they're just invisible variables and all that. There's nothing in them. In order for them to work, we have to pass them as an argument to this parameter. So I remember last time we said the first argument takes the first parameter, the second takes the second parameter, and all that, right? Yeah. So now we are going to pick this example and have it run and check what it is. So here, sorry. Okay. So here we have this example where we are to look at what it is when we talk about sequence control, right? Yes. So here is the first example, and what is it going to do basically is to console log what is passed. So now we have two functions, like I said. The first one is my display, the second one is my calculator, and we have the my calculator called here with the arguments, and which is matching the parameter. We have two parameters and I have two arguments here, and in a bit to call this particular function, right, called my display, we had to pass the results that we have here in as as an argument to this particular parameter, which has made us to have some control over how these functions are to run. So I'm going to run this particular snippet like we always do. Npm run start, and then we have 10. So what happened here, like I just explained, this is my calculator, and in a bit to explain or to have this setup, what do? We calculated the we did calculate the using the my calculator function, where we calculated using this parameter here 5 and two of the values here, the arguments here, and it did calculate, of course. And then having it calculated, it was returned. So what we returned here was the sum, and of course if this particular function is run, we get the result, which is the sum. And then the sum which we got, and we have it put in a variable, declared in a variable, and then have it passed in as an argument to this particular function. So that's that. And doing this, we're able to have some kind of control on how a function is. So let's take on another example. Here is another example. So I'm going to comment this out in order for me to just display some single listing. So here's another function to a bit of kind of check what we have with regards to what it is. So here's another function also, and this function is basically kind of the same, but how it's been run. So the same way we have the first function here, and then the second function here, which is that this particular function, my calculator, tends to sum particular numbers that are being passed in as a parameter, but it's coming from the arguments, the real numbers or the real values. And then we came in here and then called this particular function here. And remember, I said for a particular function to execute, it has to be called. And we saw in that code snippet, which is this, on how a particular function is being called, of course. Yeah, so which is this. So from this particular snippet, once this is summed, all right, the next thing it turns to do is that it calls this particular function. Doing this, it means that we already have autonomy, a control on how this function is going to, of course, run. So when you run this, it's still going to give us okay, let me declare it out and order. So on the npm run start, we have, oh, it's undefined. Why is it undefined? Okay, yeah, it's undefined because we call this, but we have not passed in we did not pass in the argument for this particular. So when we put in the argument sum, let's try it again, right? And then we do npm run start. What do we have? We have 10, of course. Yes, that's the result. So that's that about that. So the next thing or the next part that I would want us to kind of talk about are the problems from the above. Now, when you check or when you have followed through what we just did, the problem with the first the problem with the first example above is that you have to call two functions to display the result. You have to call two functions to display the result. Now, the problem with the second example is that you cannot prevent the calculator function from displaying the result. Now it is time for us to bring in a callback, right? So let's talk about callback. Like I did when I began, I said a callback is a function passed as an argument to another function, and this technique allows a function to call another function, and a callback function can run after another function has finished. Now, using a callback, you could call the calculator function, my calculator, with the callback, my callback, right? And let the calculator function to run the callback after the calculation is finished. So basically, you see now, this is where we begin to have some things and touch about what callbacks are. Now, look at this example that we have. We have two examples. The first is my display there, of course, like we had, and then we have another function called my calculator, and then it's taking three parameters: the number one, the number two, and then my callback. And this my callback basically is a parameter that is going to run a particular callback, right? Yeah, so when we pass in the argument of a particular function in a particular function, and that's basically what the callback is. It is and all that, yeah, right? So in a bit to okay, let's try out the example that we have here, right? So what we're going to do is to kind of copy that, and then I will paste things. Of course, I've um I've tried them out and all that. So in the process to kind of do some presentation, right? Yeah, so we'll copy it. Okay, trying to copy from FigJam is trying to give us some one or two issues. Okay, yes, because it's not closed here. Yes, so that's what it is. So of course, what does this particular function? We have two functions: my display, and then the other function, my calculator. The only difference between this and the other functions is the fact that this is a callback where we have to pass in as a parameter a particular function in order to display. So basically now, if you check, my calculator has three parameters, and here this is the arguments, and we're actually calling the function my calculator with this particular three arguments, right? Only that the last argument is the function that we have created here, and we are calling it, and because we are not calling it anywhere else but in an argument where once it is being exposed in the particular function my calculator, it tends to run and all that. So if we try out this, of course, I hope it does. Of course, definitely it will give us a response that we are looking for. So boom, yeah, 10 exactly. So that's that about that. So basically that's what the callback function is. You call a function in another function, basically passing it in a parameter. But then there are some things I want us to do. So I want us to checking, sorry for the interruption, or yes. So in the example above, you will see that my displayer is called a callback function, and it is passed to my calculator as an argument. Of course, look at it here, that's what it is. And then also, when you pass a function as an argument, remember not to use parentheses, right? For instance, look at it here. Now this is the right one and this is the wrong one. In a bit to kind of call a particular function, you say you call the name of the function and then a parenthesis, but then passing a function in an argument, or of course in a parameter, does not need you to place in the parentheses like this, which is actually wrong. You just call it, and then of course whatever it is, it tends to note that. So another thing is that when to actually use a callback. Of course, we need to know when to use the callback. Now, the examples above are not very exciting. Of course, they are simplified just to teach you the callback syntax, right? And to does that. So callback really shines in asynchronous functions, where one function has to wait for another function, right? Like waiting for a file to load and all that. So asynchronous functions are covered in the next chapter. So in the next tutorial, we are going to be talking about asynchronous function, right? So thank you for staying through. This is just a bit of what I can actually discuss, or kind of give us some heads up with callbacks in JavaScript basic. So we'll continue in the next class. Thank you.